Winning the Super Bowl is the ultimate goal of every NFL team, but most of the time, it's really won before the season even starts. A great offseason can turn a bottom-feeding team into one that ends up with the Lombardi trophy. Teams have changed their destiny by acquiring and dropping the right players. There have been franchises that created a new era of winning, players that became stars from changing locations, and one off-season move that solidified a career while at the same time jeopardizing another. This is the gridiron. Jerome Bettis started his career with the Rams. In his first 2 seasons, he rushed for over 1,000 yards, but in his third year, the Rams stopped using him as much. His numbers looked to be only average. On draft day 1996, the Rams traded Bettis to the Steelers with a third-round pick in exchange for a second-rounder and a fourth-rounder. The Rams were intent on rebuilding their team, and the Steelers wanted the big bruising back now. In Pittsburgh, Jerome Bettis went on to have one of the best careers ever. 10 years with the Steelers, 4 Pro Bowl years, and his first 6 years there were 1,000-plus rushing yard seasons. The Bucs is now the 6th leading rusher of all time. He was a key part of Pittsburgh's sustained success over that next decade. In his last year in the league, the Steelers won the Super Bowl, something the team hadn't done in 26 years. Do you think the Rams would have let him go if they knew he'd do all that? Now, the Rams also won a Super Bowl in that same span, so they can't be too mad. From 1996 to 2005, the Rams' record was 85-75, and they won their division 3 times. Over that same span, with Bettis as a key part of Pittsburgh's offense, they went 98-61-1, and they won their division 5 times. The Steelers had a better stretch, but both teams seemed to benefit from this trade. The Steelers finally won a Super Bowl, but it was nothing like this next drought. A team that had to wait a very long time for a Super Bowl win was the Green Bay Packers. They won Super Bowls 1 and 2, and then things got really dry in Wisconsin. We know the man who got them their next Super Bowl was Brett Favre. But Favre wasn't drafted by the Packers. It was the Falcons who grabbed him in the second round of the 1991 draft. He sat behind Chris Miller and Billy Joe Tolliver. He only saw action in 2 games. His first NFL pass was a pick 6, 4 total pass attempts, 0 completions, and 1 more interception for good measure. Favre did not look like a franchise-changing quarterback to anyone, except to the new Green Bay general manager, Ron Wolf, who acquired Favre for a first-round pick in the 1992 draft. And then, you guessed it, he turned into Brett Favre, the gunslinger. Sure, he led the league in interceptions twice while in Green Bay, but he led the league in touchdowns 4 times, including the 96 season when he won MVP and led the Packers to their first Super Bowl win in 29 years. It all paid off in just a few short years from this offseason move. Wolf saw the potential in the Atlanta backup, who threw as many interceptions as he did incompletions. And Favre took the Packers to the promised land, all for just a first-round pick. The following season, Favre even took the Packers back to the Super Bowl. So was this off-season move the one that paid off with back-to-back Super Bowl victories? Or did someone else on this list have something to say about that 97 Super Bowl? Before we look at that 1997 Super Bowl, we have to go all the way back to the 1983 draft. A draft filled with quality quarterbacks like Dan Marino and Jim Kelly. The Baltimore Colts selected John Elway with the first pick, but he actually refused to play for the Colts. So, Baltimore was forced to make a trade and the Broncos took a chance on Elway. Getting a player who refused to play for an organization, you never know what could happen. Also, who knew if he was even an NFL-caliber quarterback? But Denver took the risk and traded offensive lineman Chris Hinton, backup quarterback Mark Herman, and a first-round pick in the 1984 draft. Denver got Elway. Now, he did have an amazing career with Denver, but there were some questions on whether this trade was a true success. His first 7 years with the team, they made the Super Bowl 3 times, but lost all of them. His next 7 years, they couldn't make it back to the big game. Would Elway ever close the deal in Denver? Well, we're back to 1997, and the Broncos finally made it back to the Super Bowl and beat those Green Bay Packers, making the trade from 15 years ago finally pay off. And to sweeten the deal, the Broncos made it back the next year and won again. Elway's legacy was cemented, and he didn't destroy anyone's career along the way. That one's coming up. Few teams repeat as Super Bowl champions. The 2019 Chiefs looked unstoppable with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill in that first Super Bowl run. They were poised to be a repeat winner. The next year, they were back in the Super Bowl, but were beaten badly in that game, losing to the Bucs 31-9. The following year, they lost to the Bengals in the AFC Championship. The Chiefs were still a threat, but seemingly on a downward spiral. Tyreek Hill was one of their deadliest weapons, but in the 2022 season, they traded him to the Dolphins. This trade was a rare one that ended up working out for both teams. Tua Tagovailoa got a bona fide number 1 receiver, the fastest in the league at that. It took the Dolphins' offense to a whole new level, but parting ways with the dynamic Tyreek Hill somehow worked out better for the Chiefs. Tyreek was going to command big money. Without that money, the Chiefs wouldn't have been able to pay other players, like their defensive anchor Chris Jones. And when they traded Hill, they got 5 draft picks. With these picks, the Chiefs were able to add strong role players, like Rashee Rice and Trent McDuffie. People thought the Chiefs would struggle with the loss of Hill, but they found a way, winning it all in back-to-back years. Mahomes was a magician and could make lesser receivers look amazing. Rice came on late but proved valuable, and McDuffie was a key piece to that 2023 defense that carried the Chiefs through much of the season. If they kept Hill, that defense would have looked very different, and maybe they wouldn't have won those back-to-back Super Bowls. Who would have thought that getting rid of one of the best receivers in the game would make your team better? But it's not like Tyreek's career was ruined, though a big move can do that, as you'll see soon. The year before Tyreek was traded to Miami, there was an even bigger offseason trade. The Rams felt they had a championship roster, but just couldn't get over the hump with Jared Goff. He took them far in the playoffs several times, once even to a Super Bowl, but they just couldn't close the deal. The Rams felt they needed a different quarterback. With what became their slogan, F them picks, the Rams traded Goff to the Lions along with a third-round pick for that year's draft and a first-round pick for both the 2022 and 23 drafts, dealing away all their picks, and they only got Matthew Stafford in return. The Rams weren't worried about the future, they were focused on the right now, and Stafford delivered right away. That very year, he led the Rams to the Super Bowl, and they finally got over the hump when they beat the Bengals and took home the Lombardi Trophy. It was huge for a franchise that only had one Super Bowl 2 decades prior. How great this looked for Stafford and his legacy. He just needed a decent team to win it all. And how bad this looked for Goff, right? As soon as he left, the Rams won it all. However, this didn't exactly destroy Goff's career. He played well for Detroit, and those picks have turned into an excellent core for the Lions. This trade helped Detroit build a winning culture, and it helped the Rams win the Super Bowl immediately. But were the Rams just copying another team that made the exact same move a year ago? Just the prior year, the Buccaneers showed everyone that one big move can turn a team around quickly. In 2020, Tampa Bay signed Tom Brady. He was already the GOAT. He was a living legend with 6 Super Bowl wins. But some wondered if his best days were far behind him. Many speculated Brady could only win Super Bowls with Bill Belichick as his coach. If you took Brady away from the Patriots, what was he? His last season in New England wasn't great. In fact, it was one of his worst seasons. His 60.8 completion percentage was one of the lowest in his career, and his last pass as a Patriot even ended with a pick 6. Some wondered if it was the right move to sign a 42-year-old declining quarterback. But Tampa saw the opportunity. They knew Brady was still Brady. His poor stats in 2019 were less because of him and more because of an offense that lacked explosive weapons. His receivers could barely get open, and still, he was 13.2% more accurate than the league average on tight window throws. Tampa was also continuously roster building. With a strong defense and electric receivers like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, they were the perfect destination for Brady. As we all know, the Bucs won the Super Bowl in Brady's first year there. Signing Brady was a fantastic move for the Bucs. He helped transform that franchise. But the move was huge for Brady, too. He proved that he didn't need Belichick to win. He moved on and still won it all. And now the conversation is flipped. Was it Bill who needed Brady all along? Sure, Belichick is cemented as a great coach, but did Brady leaving and winning hurt Belichick's legacy? It's so crucial for teams to win the offseason by acquiring the right players and dropping expensive ones. Future Super Bowl champions are built before the season even begins.